Oh my gosh, like I'm kind of nervous. I'm so honored that you even asked me. I think the world of Stephanie, you guys, which I'm sure you guys do as well. So this is a, yes, I know she's amazing. So, well, I actually met Stephanie while getting a pedicure in Maui on our elite trip, and I started Rodan and Fields in July of 2013. So I just celebrated my 6th year in Rodan and Fields. And I was in television, and I was introduced to this by my friend at work, and I thought she was crazy for thinking that I would do something like this. So I literally like ran down the hall and just prayed she'd never bring it up again, but she did. And by the time she brought it up again, it was 6 months later, and things in my life had changed. I don't know if you've ever heard of that like it's every 5 to 6 months something happens in someone's life. That's why we should always follow up. Well, she followed up. And at the time, we had learned that our television station was being sold, and we were worried about getting laid off. We had survived layoffs in the past, but we didn't know if we were going to be so lucky this time around. So I was just talking to her because she was a good friend of mine. I wanted to know if she was nervous. She brought up this skincare thing again. And I was like, really? That's your plan B? And as we were talking, I noticed her skin. I was like, your skin does look really good. But I was not interested in the business. My husband, though, is a business owner. And so when I told him what my friend was doing, he was like, are you kidding me? We'd be crazy not to try this. I was in $20,000 of credit card debt from my lovely spending habits. And we were constantly fighting over the credit card bills and this crazy Dave Ramsey budget we were on. And he was like, I don't know if y'all know who Dave Ramsey is. Anybody? Yeah. Okay. So we just gone through Financial Peace University at our church. And as you know, those of you who are Dave Ramsey fans, he preaches that you should have multiple streams of income coming in, especially if you're in debt. So this looks like, a Dave Ramsey winner. So we said, let's do it. We've got 60 days. We jumped in. And honestly, my goal was to just help pay off some of that credit card debt. But not only was I worried about losing my job, I hated my job. And so on day 7 of Rodan and Fields, I had listened to some training calls already, and I was sitting in a counseling office. So that's how dire things were back then. With my husband, I convinced him to go with me. And I remember just hearing that, because he just started a new business, he needed me to make what I was making for at least 10 more years. And I'm sitting there in the counseling session thinking, there's no way. I'm so miserable. And I just turned around there on the counseling office couch, and I was like, no, I'm going to have to replace my income with this Rodan and Fields thing. And he was like, do you know how much time and energy that will take? I'm like, I don't care, because first of all, I don't even know if they'll keep me for 10 more years, but second of all, I don't think I will survive 10 more years of this. So anyway, that was it. I just decided, I made a commitment right then and there that I had no other option. This was my answer, and I was going to go all in. And so I'm going to talk about that in just a bit, because I know that you guys have seen a lot of training about how to do things, and how to talk to people and how to structure your day. And I'm going to talk about how to set your goals. But the bottom line is this: you can watch how-to trainings all the time, but if you're not committed, and if you have not made the decision that you're really going to do this, it's a waste of time. All of this is a waste of time, honestly, because I know from experience, when I'm in a lull or when I'm in a funk, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know how to do it. But if I haven't made that commitment, that decision, and really been intentional about my mindset, it's not going to happen. But that day, I made a decision. This is happening. And he was right. It took time, and it was not easy. But I had the drive and the why big enough that I was like, I'm just going to do this. And when I reverse engineer and look back, I was so laser focused that I didn't pay attention to the naysayers. I had friends say nasty things about me. My sister-in-law was one of them, who eventually joined me in business a year and a half later. My mom laughed at me. I could have hung out with the people on our team who were not doing very well. I could have done that, but I didn't even think to do that. I just kept laser focused on the people who I wanted to be like, who I wanted to have the life like, who I wanted to have the results. So one of my mentors is Holly Reed. If you don't know Holly, you're missing out because she's amazing. But she is the nearest RFX leader above me. At the time, she was a level 5. But I just stayed fixated on what Holly Reed was doing. And so when Holly would ask me to do something, I didn't even give myself a chance to say no. I just said yes. I had just programmed myself to say, and she's a good person. She could have been a really evil person, I guess, and I'd been in a lot of trouble. But she was very well respected by corporate. She's one of the kindest people I know. And so I didn't give myself the chance to talk myself out of things. So when corporate came 4 weeks later, after I had joined Rodan and Fields, and Holly called me up. I can remember the stoplight I was at. And she said, corporate's coming. I'd really like for you to speak. And you guys, just because I'm in television doesn't mean that I was comfortable in crowds. In fact, it was one of my biggest fears. But I remember sitting at that traffic light, and I didn't even blink an eye, and I was like, yes. Because I was just like, whatever Holly asked me to do, she was speaking, so I said yes. So I learned early on how to override that type of fear. Now, other fears in my life were driving me, which I don't even know if we'll get into that today, but if you're watching the Sarah Robbins training tomorrow, I'll talk about it, because I was definitely not like in a good place emotionally. But when it came to you set a goal, you have a reason, and you push through the fear, I was really good at that. And that's why I promoted in the company so quickly. And I'm going to talk about the way I set my goals, because I was really busy. I not only had a 2-year-old at the time, I was a news producer and reader on a very early morning radio show. So I got up at 3 a.m. and I produced my little show, and I recorded it in my closet in the next room in there. And then I would drop my son off at 6 a.m. and then I would be at the TV station at 7. And so at that point in my life, I had gotten out of the news department, and I was on a lifestyle show. So it was a very different world than news. I had clients I had to deal with. It was high stress. But I managed to figure out how to build my business in the little tiny slivers of time I had by making sure that my goals were reasonable and small enough that they didn't overwhelm me, that I would actually do them every single day. And so I'm gonna walk through why that's important before I show you the how. Because again, I want to make sure that I can get you committed before I show you how. Because if you don't commit and I show you how, it's a waste of your time and my time. So I'm gonna walk you through that. So fast forward, I paid off my $20,000 of credit card debt, and I was able to replace my hair away from 6-figure salary. I think I made literally $99,000 in 18 months. And I kept plugging away, and I was having fun with it, but I was also living in a different kind of fear that we'll talk about, which is why I'm now a very different person than I was back then. I will say, I was not a great leader back then. I didn't know how to lead other people. I just knew how to get my crap done. I didn't know how to help people because I was one of those people who just, from early on, when I was a kid, you just sucked it up and you figured it out, and you did not ask for help, and you didn't lean on other people. So I could model what other people were doing, and I could do a training like this all day because I'm comfortable in front of the camera. I can dissect things. That's why it's good. I'm really good at taking something complex and watering it down to just 3 key points and focusing on those things, which these are strengths that I'm talking about. So I had those strengths. I'm still good at that. I can train. You can give me a seminar and I can write down the key points, and bam, I can do a live shot and tell you exactly what the meat of it was. That's my strength. What I'm not good at is I'm not really good at spreadsheets and details. I'm not very patient. It was hard. I could talk to someone and tell them what to do, bam, 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 this is what you're supposed to do. But again, if I was not listening to them and getting to know them well enough and understanding how I could help them, then they're not going to commit because they're too scared, and I'm just shouting out a bunch of orders. And so I look back, and that's where I went wrong. But it's okay, because I was able to learn from other people, which is what's so amazing about this business is that we get to lean on other people who have strengths in areas that we don't. So I'm able to see that now. But what I wanted to mention before I get into this, because the reason that I train on what I'm about to train on now is because of a recent experience. So fast forward, I did all my whys. I paid off the debt. I replaced the income. I started a nonprofit TV show, which was a big why of mine. And my workaholism got out of control. So even though I had left Channel 4, my TV station in St. Louis, I was working harder than ever on a nonprofit TV station, a nonprofit television show that I had started. And I was miserable, and my anxiety was insane. I was having panic attacks. I'd never had panic attacks. And my secret that I'd had for several years was getting bigger and bigger. And that is, I had a drinking problem, like a big time drinking problem. And here's what's so ironic is, like, I'm literally hosting, producing, and I own a faith-based TV show. My co-host is a recovered alcoholic, and I'm literally coming home every night drinking up to 2 bottles of wine a night. And nobody knows. My team, when I came out with my big secret back in November, they were floored. Like, I had some whispers behind my back, like, was she trying to get attention? Like, she didn't have a drinking problem. Well, no, I'm a control freak. I'm very good at, like, looking good, like looking perfect and looking like I have it all together. So I would drink with the rest of them, and then I would do the rest of my drinking at home. I also learned that I'm actually an introvert who drinks to be an extrovert. So I would always drink to be comfortable in situations where I wasn't comfortable. Why does this have anything to do with you? Well, number one of the reasons I get so excited to talk to people, even if it's, not about Rodan and Fields or has nothing to do with business, is that if I share my story, maybe there's one person, it gets me all, one person who needed to hear that. And maybe it's not about drinking, but it's something else in their life that they feel like is shackling them down, and they feel like maybe I should just go talk to somebody, because I really felt like I had this unique story. Like, I'm not an alcoholic because I've not had a DUI, and I haven't lost my job, and I haven't lost my family, and nobody knows. And so I just felt like nobody else would understand that. And I started to hear other people's stories. I was at convention 2 years ago, and Emily Paulson, who is an RFX Circle Achiever, she did a special training for Elite and Above, and she comes out and tells us she's 9 months sober, and she tells her story. And that was one of many big time hints from God that, yeah, you can do this too. And I didn't get sober for, over a year after that happened, but that experience just solidified how powerful our stories are, and how maybe our story isn't as unique as you think. Maybe there is somebody out there that when they listen, they're like, oh, me too. And maybe I'm just planting a seed like Emily planted a seed in my head that day. So that's why I get so excited, you guys, to talk, because maybe everything I talk about today about goals, well, none of it will make sense to you, or it won't resonate with you at all. But maybe some part of my story will. And I want you to know how powerful your story is. Every time we tell it, we are able to reach somebody. And it doesn't mean that we're talking people's ears off and we're all self-absorbed and we're talking about ourselves, but just know how powerful your story is, because we were put on this planet to live out a purpose. And sometimes it's not about Rodan and Fields. Sometimes it's about something else. But anyway, I got off on a tangent. The way I got sober was not AA meetings, okay? Nothing against those, but it's just not what I did. One of the components that I did is what has enlightened me to this whole thing. I started a whole podcast on it because it excites me so much. So it was this, and I didn't even realize what I was doing when I did it, but when I reverse engineer, when I break it down to those bullet points that I'm good at, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so key in what I did. And one of the things I did was I had to stop drinking to figure this out. I had to start figuring out why I drank in the first place. And every time I would look at the trigger and I would figure out what caused that, I was able to find a new fear, And the other thing was, I also started to really study what alcohol did to my brain. And when I understood what alcohol did to my brain, it wasn't about, oh, you're such a terrible person with awful willpower. It was about, dang, that's what happened to my brain. That's why it makes sense to stay off the stuff for at least 90 days and know that it's going to be hard as all get out, and it's eventually going to get better. So that's when I applied it to my business. I'm like, well, I want to hear more about this brain. And what's funny is I actually have a psychology degree, and I remember studying this stuff to get an A, but I never thought to apply it to my life. So I may show you these little pictures and you're like, who doesn't know this? Sorry about that. But my question is, are you really applying it to your life? Even if you know this stuff, are you really applying it to your life? But what would happen that was so key, and then I'm going to get into this, is that when I would get that overwhelming craving, or like on day 7, when after I quit drinking, I had a panic attack and I was supposed to go speak at an event that night, and I literally couldn't get off the couch, I was able to say, oh, that's my brain doing what my brain's supposed to be doing. I read about this. This makes sense. So instead of it getting me all worked up and looking sting, and I was able to keep pushing forward. And I pushed through those days when I really wanted to drink, because I knew from education, this was my brain doing what my brain does when it's addicted to alcohol. So did that make sense? And can y'all still see me? Because I got a little sign saying my internet's unstable. Are y'all good? Thumbs up? Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to share my screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what your brain does when you freak out about something. Okay. So when we freak out about talking to somebody about our business, or we freak out about speaking in public, this is our brain doing what our brain's supposed to do. And now my goal is for you is to, when a trigger, when I wanted to drink, you're going to step back eventually. It's not going to happen overnight. If you do this enough as an observer and go, oh, that's my brain doing what my brain does. And I'm going to push through this. I'm going to override the fear, because I know the blessings and the good stuff are on the other side of fear. I truly believe now, well, I'll get into that, but I do truly believe that when things really scare us, but we can't stop thinking about them, like starting a skincare business, it's a big sign that you're supposed to do it. That this is God saying, yes, yes, open that door. I open that door for you. Now walk through it. It's scary, but you're going to be blessed on the other side. Just like when I quit drinking, that's why it took me so long. I was so scared to quit and let go of that security blanket. And it's been literally the best thing that's ever happened to me. I've never been happier in my life, which is why I look a little bit crazy and I talk real fast, but it's okay because I'm happy. And so I just want people to know that it's possible. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen and show you. Oh, I hear dogs. No, Bourbon is the name of my dog. Isn't that? He's in here too. Hi, Bourbon. Okay, so let's see if I can do this. I've never actually used this computer for Zoom before. Did I just cut y'all off? What happened? No, we're here. You see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Hold on. I'm using a new mouse. Like I literally just got this computer. So y'all just saw my whole presentation. Let's back up to the beginning. It'll let me. Come on. Okay. So y'all have heard of the reptilian brain, right? The reptilian part of our brain is basically our brain stem. And the reason that they call it the reptile brain is because it is the only part of the brain that the reptile has. And the reptile does not have emotions. It cannot think. It doesn't feel. It literally just reacts. The reptile knows when it's in danger, so it knows to go away from the danger to, protect itself. It knows when it's hungry. It knows when it's horny, and that's it, okay? And we all have that same part of the brain. But the good news is we have 2 other layers of our brain. But when it comes to fear, and it doesn't matter what the fear is about, our brain stem directly starts to affect our bodies. So if you stand too close to a cliff, you're going to start feeling panicked and your heart rate goes up. You might sweat, you might shake a little bit. Same exact response for people who are about to go speak on stage in front of a room full of people when that is a fear of theirs, right? Your body doesn't know the difference. Mel Robbins, who spoke at convention, I believe it was last year, I love her. And if you don't know who she is, you really need to go read her stuff. But one of the things she talks about is how our brains have 2 modes or 2 gears. And one of them is the comfort zone, which is autopilot. Our brain likes to stay in the comfort zone because the reptile brain is meant there to just protect you. So when it feels like it's in its comfort zone, it feels like it's doing its job. It's keeping us safe. And the comfort zone, we all know all about it. It's where you sit and nothing magical happens. You just sit doing the same thing, nothing changes, so nothing changes. That's one gear. As soon as we get a great idea, like, oh my gosh, I really should go talk to that girl over there. She looks like she would be so fun to talk to. Maybe she'd be interested about the business. Well, that's outside your comfort zone. So all of a sudden your brain shifts into the other gear, and that is emergency brake, which is freeze. We're not going to do that. That's scary because the brain doesn't know that you're not close to falling off a cliff or that you're going to talk to that cute girl over there about the business. It just knows that you are scared of something. It's outside of the comfort zone. That's not good. So that's why we get like that. But the problem is we're not doing anything smart with our business or with life if we're staying in our comfort zone all the time. Nothing fun happens. So the great thing about us is if we can become observers of that, we can get that thought, that idea up to the rational part of our brain and recognize that and realize, oh no, this is actually something that you really should do. We just need to ignore that. Or even a better way to do it is to recognize that, okay, maybe this isn't nerves that's making me feel this way. Maybe this is excitement. It's the exact same symptoms when you're excited. So now when I go up and speak in front of people, I get the same exact response physically that I used to, but I know that I'm helping people. So that takes the thought off of me, first of all. And I know that this is my body just doing what it's supposed to do. This is my brain thinking it's scary, but really it's exciting because I'm about to go help people. And so that is how I shift my focus into my rational part of my brain and I carry on. Okay, so there's a quick little example of that. Okay, so this is actually the same picture that Diane Dietz showed us in Barcelona when she was talking about how to grow as a business leader. And she talked about how we have our comfort zone, which I just talked about. So that's the reptile part of our brain. It likes to stay safe and cool. And then there's the learning zone, and then there's the panic zone. And that's when it feels like all hell is breaking loose and there's no way you can do that thing. And everything around you is telling you you can't do that thing. And so you freak out and you go home, and that's the comfort zone. Nothing good happens in the comfort zone. The learning zone is where it all happens. So here's the example of that. So as you can see, in the comfort zone, we're not challenged, we're bored, we're lifeless. We're just doing the same old, same old. This is how I felt when I worked at that job. It was like every day is the same thing. I just want to get through the day. I lived for the weekend. I mean, this is how you really waste your life, is living in the comfort zone, because nothing is helping you get better, and therefore you're not helping anybody. And that's not why we're here. So if you look at the next level, this is where the learning zone is. This is where the magic happens. So we're excited because we've recognized that that fear is not fear, it's just excitement. And we're stretching ourselves a little bit. And we're looking for new opportunities and new ways to learn. And when we're learning, we're always having fun because we're getting better. And we're helping other people do the same thing. But if we let our reptile brains take over, it will get us to the panic zone. You know, maybe your business isn't going well and you're looking at all the reasons why you think it's not going well, and that's all you can fixate on. Or you're actually hanging around people and that's all they talk about and you fixate on it. That's when we get really freaked out and scared and we go home and we don't do anything with our businesses, and therefore we don't grow. So here's a great example of how that domino effect happens. So the programming and the beliefs and the thoughts that are going through your mind, if you're living in the reptile zone or the panic zone, and if you're living with the reptile brain, is that you're going to tell yourself that you're not good at this, that there's nobody else who wants to do this, this is ridiculous, why would I ever think this? And then you've also got a part of your brain which is telling you this stuff and you're not even aware of this, which is a whole nother training. And if you want to listen to my podcast, I get all into that fun stuff because it really excites me. So if you want to look at that, my podcast is called This Is Your Life, and you can listen to more about that. But just know that the thoughts that are in your head and the beliefs that are in your head are what creates your feelings and emotions. And your feelings and emotions dictate what you're going to do that day. So if you're feeling depressed and woe is me and nobody cares what I have to say, of course you're not going to do anything. And if you're not going to do anything, of course you're not going to have the results that you want. And then those results actually come right back around and they reinforce your beliefs. And it's just this cycle effect that you can't get out of. So at the very beginning, we have to be aware of what we're feeling, and then ask ourselves, are these thoughts even real? Are we thinking these things because we are surrounding ourselves with the wrong things and programming our subconscious brain to be feeding us these awful thoughts? Or is it real? Is it really true that, you're terrible and you can't do anything? So I just want people to wake up and be mindful. Okay. So how do we stay out of the panic zone? Well, we have to have those daily reminders of why we started this in the first place. We have to be really mindful of what the thoughts are that we're thinking and saying. One of the things that I did when I first started getting sober is not only did I not want to drink, but I wanted to be a happy person. It wasn't that I just wanted to be dry. I wanted to be a happy person. So I actually journaled in real time what my life felt like and what it looked like as this happy, sober person. I was in great detail. And I actually did this, I've done this with a few things in my life, but what you're doing is you're reprogramming your subconscious mind because it doesn't know the difference in real memories and fake ones. It doesn't. Isn't that crazy? Just like your reptile brain doesn't know the difference in like a real fear that's going to kill you and a real fear because you're just nervous to go talk to that stranger. Your subconscious mind doesn't know what memories are real and not. So I really wanted to focus on the type of person I wanted to be and what I felt like. So this is also what I did on the really bad days, my Rodan and Fields bad days, when I was so done with walking into that TV station, that toxic environment yet again. I would and I didn't do that. I didn't know what I was doing, but looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I did. That's totally why this whole thing worked. I would picture myself in my living room on a snowy day, watching the news coverage of the snowy day with my coffee in my pajamas, smiling because I was so stinking happy that I no longer had to work there and be told to go out in the snow at 4 a.m. to talk about the snowy roads. Like, this was the vision I would give myself. That was how big my why was. I could taste it. I could feel it. So on the worst days when I didn't want to do my little tiny checklist of goals to do, I still did them because I was so fixated on why I started this in the first place. And then the next thing is, I talk about that, the vision, the detail. You need to know exactly why you're doing this and what you want out of this. And you guys, for me, it was money. I needed to replace my income. That's not my big why now. I'm not working there anymore. And I'm really happy with where I live. I don't need a different lifestyle. I'm not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, I'm good. But now, as I said in the very beginning, like every day I'm like, I'll cry. I picture myself talking to people and seeing their faces when they're like, they really understand that they can have that life too, whatever that why is for them. It is real for them. They're just living in fear and they don't realize it. That's my why. I get up every day excited to see who I get to talk to every single day. And dude, that takes the fear out real fast, because if all your goal is to help one person, it's not about you. I can take 1,000 people talking about me saying I sound crazy if you come back and tell me, yes, but let me tell you about the girl that you just completely transformed her whole mindset today. I'm like, that's what I'm going for. If I think about my friend Bridget chickening out and not staying on me to get on that three-way call with Holly, because that's what happened, and then I canceled, and then she had to reschedule it. I'm like, please just leave me alone. But I think about how Bridget stayed on me. I remember the conversation I had with her. This is, again, while she's prospecting me. And I'm like, dude, why are you looking at me for Rodan and Fields? Claire Kellett, who is another news anchor, she's who you want to go after. Now that girl can build a team. Like, do you know how charismatic she is? She walks into a room and everybody just wants to talk to Claire because they make her feel better. And I remember Bridget saying to me, you just described yourself. And I'm like, what? Because she saw a person that I didn't see. That's the kind of effect you have on somebody. But if we're living in fear, we can't help a soul, because we're so fixated on that reptile part of our brain who's telling us that we're going to die if we go talk to somebody. So that's why it's so cool to understand what's actually going on. And then the last thing is, your brain is wired so that if you don't overwhelm it, it will get you to that one little step. And then you'll have the confidence to do the next thing. So my Dave Ramsey fans in there, I actually learned this from Dave Ramsey when I was getting out of debt. Dave Ramsey has what's called the debt snowball. And he preaches, he's not a preacher, but you feel like he is. He preaches that you should go after your smallest debt first. Okay, so in my lovely debt portfolio, I had my whopping $18,000 Visa credit card. I had my small car payment. And then I had these tiny little, I'm embarrassed to even tell you about, credit cards, my Express credit card and my American Eagle credit card. They were like, I don't know, $200 maybe. So in the Dave Ramsey Snowball, you just go after the smallest credit card. You take whatever you have left over from after you pay your bills and you throw it at that small credit card. You don't worry, you pay the bare minimum on the other credit cards. And the idea is you've eliminated something which makes you feel like you're winning. And now you've built up the confidence and the extra money to throw at the next size debt. So it's the same concept. I knew, because I did it and it was not pretty, when I got up in the morning and I thought, okay, we've got to pay off $20,000 of credit card debt and make a $7,500 paycheck with Rodan & Fields this month in order to replace my income. If I did that every morning, I would have been like, hell no, there's no way, that's impossible. I can't do that. And I would have shut myself down. So then I had to say, okay, that's your big, so now we're going to go to the worksheet, everybody. Is it on here?
You go in the green folder, you have this worksheet.
Yeah. So as you can see on here, there's the pie in the sky goal. So my pie in the sky goal was to make at least $7,500 a month. And that's in addition to paying off my whopping credit card debt. But that was too big for me. And I had to put a vision to that. It wasn't about money. It was about life. It was about having a happy life. So I had to put a picture to that. And I already shared that with you. Now, the thing I missed out on, which is a whole new training, but I can give you this little thing, is don't just talk about that. I want you to talk about how, like what I did when I got sober. I want you to take that pie in the sky goal and I want you to put a dollar amount on it. But then I want you to have, and you should do this on a daily basis if you will do it. You should not only have a gratitude list in the morning of 3 things that you're thankful for when you first wake up, because you're reminding yourself of the fact that you have a sweet life. I mean, we live in freaking America and we're alive, and you guys can see and hear me right now, and you're with one of the best teams in Rodan & Fields. Like, you've got a sweet gig going on. So you need to be really appreciative of what you already have. That's also going to be reprogramming that subconscious brain. Again, listen to the podcast if you want me to get into the real nitty gritty, but there's science behind these things I'm talking about. It's not woo woo. This is science we're talking about. So the 3 items gratitude list is going to be part of your pie in the sky goal. The other thing though, and I learned this from Leslie Zann too. I didn't know what she was talking about, but now I look back and I'm like, oh, that's what Leslie Zann talks about. It's kind of like the vision board, but we're going to take it a step further. You need to be journaling like it's real time, like you're literally already living the life or the why that you want so badly. You can taste it. You can see what you're wearing. You can see the colors of the paint on the walls in the room. But here's what's most important that I totally missed out on, that I'm glad I figured it out at the age of 45. You also need to be really aware of what relationships look like in your life. So what does your marriage look like? What does your relationship look like with your kids? What does your relationship look like with your friends? What are you doing with your time to serve others? And by the way, serving others is really all about you feeling good too. So it goes both ways. These are the things that I neglected. And when I got to RFX Circle Achiever and I got to, making more money than I did at Channel 4, I was not happy because I fixated on only one section of my life. I fixated on the money and walking away from the job, but I didn't fixate on what kind of person I wanted to be, and so I wasn't happy. But the best news is you don't have to have all the money to be happy. Like, that stuff can come now. But I'm just saying this is the kind of stuff you want to be thinking about so that you've really got yourself so excited that every morning you are on fire for life and can't wait to go out and do these baby goals we're going to talk about. Okay, so that's big pie in the sky goal. Now, the journaling and all that, yes, we do that on a daily basis. But the big, how much money you're going to make, over your career of Rodan & Fields, that's not something we can think about on a daily basis. That's too big. Our brains don't want to think like that. Our brains need to back up a little bit and think about, okay, what are we going to accomplish this month? So maybe you have a PSQV goal. Maybe you have a recruiting goal. Maybe it's a lead the way goal, and that's good. We're not going to think about that every day. But we need to make sure we have it, and we need to understand why that's important for us. So why is this PSQV goal good for you this month? Beat your best, because it's better than last month. We're not comparing to anybody else in the business except you. What'd you do last month? Let's do better than that, okay? So that's your monthly goal. Then you've got your weekly goal. Now, this can be broken up into different things. For some people, we like to do 600 by the 6. Actually, you should be doing 600 by the 6. But other people will do another layer to that. Maybe they want to have a certain amount of EC legs by the 6. You know, maybe they want to be a level 1 by the 6. Maybe they're running for level 5, but we don't want to wait until the very last month or last week to be having these conversations with our directs. We need to be thinking about that and being proactive, and not just, and that's a different training about communication with your directs, but this is a key component of it. We need to condition ourselves to start looking at our business growing all throughout the month and not just jacking it in at the last minute, you know, or packing it in at the last minute. So that's a part of front loading your month. But also, when I was running for level 5, and I've heard other Rodan I've heard all other RFX achievers train on this, and I'm like, oh, I did that too. I tried to have at least one-on-one a week. Now, here's where we get into the activity goals. So now we're not going to we talked about results, but now I really want you to focus on the process and the effort, because that's where the main energy should go. So having a one-on-one is something that most of us can do. I mean, you can go catch up with a friend. You can meet somebody for coffee. You might have to get out of your house if you're not social, but we need to get you there. But I wanted to have at least one-on-one a week when I was working. So we weren't even allowed to take breaks. So that was kind of like, that was fun in itself, because I was like sneaking out of the station and going rogue, and it sounds so ridiculous. I was having coffee with somebody. But anyway, that was one of my goals. Or maybe your goal is to have 3 power shot calls with your directs or your business partners that week. Maybe it is to have 3 three-way calls, but something that is based on activity and not results in that week. Activity that's going to get you to your results. So again, going back to our model, we've got to be focused on our mindset, because that creates our emotions, which therefore gets us set up to do the activity. And if our belief system and our mindset is in a jacked up place, you're less likely to do this activity. But sometimes we just have to do it anyway. And just trust the system, trust the process, that it's going to work for us. So sometimes I didn't want to do calls and I didn't want to meet with people, but I had to trust the process and know that if I make sure that my activity goals are done, my results will then be there at the end of the day or month. So there's that. So that's your weekly. And then here's the daily. On the daily. I actually learned this when I was a level 2. I think I'd been a level 2 for 6-7 months, a long time. And I was really frustrated and I wanted to quit. And Stacy Thayer, she was Stacy Snee at the time, did Sarah Robbins' training call. And on her training call, I remember she said that she only had 1 hour to work this business after her 2 kids went to bed. And she had a checklist, and she wouldn't go to bed until that checklist was done. Now, her training was phenomenal, but she didn't tell me what was on the checklist. So I messaged Stacy, and I'm like, I'm about to quit. I just heard your training, and I swear if you tell me what your checklist is, I won't quit. Like, she would care. But she told me her checklist. And this is what I did. So here's Stacy Thayer's checklist. She reached out to 5 people. She followed up with 3. She always was on the phone with somebody, and she was scheduling a call for the next day. Any kind of order she had, she processed during that time, and any three-way call she had with her upline, because Sarah Robbins is her upline. Sarah knew that Stacy was always working her business at like 8:30 at night. So she knew that was, especially, this is mainly when Stacy was new. I learned that later, but when Stacy was new, Sarah knew that Stacy was running hard. So Sarah would make sure that she kept her time open around 8:30, because she knew Stacy, because Stacy was a three-way call queen. She knew Stacy would be bringing her calls. So that's another little side note. But anyway, that was what Stacy did every day. So that's what I did. And so I literally would tell people, when I would, get them to say yes to a phone call, I scheduled for that call to be at 4:10, because I knew I'd be in my car by then. And a lot of times they would not answer, but I was not allowed to leave the parking lot. This is the game I played with myself, until I had someone on the phone. Sometimes that person on the phone was Holly. Sometimes it was a direct of mine. I just wanted to use my car time as a way to grow my business. Now, obviously, I wanted prospects on that phone call, but that was my goal. I wasn't allowed to leave the parking lot unless I had somebody on there. So that forced me to, keep in touch with other people on the team. And so those are my daily goals. Now, on some days, if it was really hard, I really whittled it down to one thing. And that was I had to share my story with at least 2 people somehow, some way. So is it a Facebook post? Yeah, but and Facebook post was one of the things on the checklist too. I didn't count that. That was on there. I had to do it, and I would always prepare my post the night before so it was ready to fire the next day. But I had to be on the phone or have a live conversation, and it wasn't like I was, telling them to join me in business. It was just I got to drop my business that day. I got to mention to somebody that this is what I do, and I got to know them well enough to understand a little bit more about them and how this business or these products could help them. So that was my one thing. I actually have a little video about that. My one thing that helped me replace my income. To this day, I have my one thing. So you've got your to-do list, and then you've got your success list. And your success list needs to be no more than 3 things, ideally one thing. And so everything on our little daily goal activity list should all feed into the one thing. And my one thing was share your story, or it could be hear someone's story, but basically you're somehow engaging with somebody. And then all the things that I talked about, the follow-ups, the phone calls, all of that supports the one thing of hearing a story, sharing a story. So that's kind of how I whittled it down to bite-sized goals. And I was able to just focus on those, knowing that if I did those daily goals, the weekly goal would be met. And if I did the weekly goal, the monthly goal would be met. And if I did the monthly goals and I was beating my best every month, eventually the pie in the sky goal would happen. Was that 30 minutes? Okay. I tend to go over, but anyway, so that's it.
Okay, that was awesome.
Thank you so much. Do y'all want me to answer any questions? I don't know what we're supposed to do now.
Yeah, hang tight 1 second. Does anybody have any questions? Can you tell us the name of your podcast again?
Oh, yes. It's called This Is Your Life. And right now it's only on Spotify and Anchor. It's supposed to be on Apple this week, but it's called This Is Your Life.
That's awesome. Okay, and then so you're training on Sarah Robbins' call tomorrow night, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
It'll be a little bit about this, but I'm going to change it up. That way y'all won't get bored if y'all watch it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Y'all have fun. I'm so excited to hear what happens I know that lives are being changed just by being able to hang out and connect with each other. So y'all continue to have fun.
Thank you. We'll chat with you soon.
Okay.
Bye, Virginia.